All right, welcome to modules 7 and 8, where we're going to be going over cellular reproduction. We're going to talk about how cells reproduce, and then we're going to talk about the two different ways that cells can divide, which is mitosis and meiosis. And so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about those two processes, and then also the components of the cell that actually are divided in those two processes. So, cellular reproduction, what does it accomplish? It basically results in the birth or the generation of new cellular organisms or new cells, depending on if it's a multicellular organism or single celled organism. Um, but if you think about in terms of humans, it's really the generation of new cells for those multicellular organisms. When a cell undergoes reproduction, so when that cell is what we call reproducing, it's generally just a cell division process where you get two daughter cells that are produced from a parent cell. And so basically, that parent cell will split to become two genetically identical daughter cells. And there are a couple of things that have to happen before that parent cell splits. First, it has to duplicate its chromosomes so that there can be two copies of each chromosome that can be separated into each individual daughter cell. So you have to have enough genetic material inside that cell for that process to happen. And then also the organelles and all of the other parts of the cell's machinery has to be duplicated as well. Not duplicated, but the cell has to have enough of those so that they can equally be separated into the daughter cells once that division process has occurred. Because you don't want to have a cell that doesn't have a specific organelle, then it's not going to function properly. So it has to grow and generate organelles, and it also has to duplicate its chromosomes. What cellular reproduction is really important for is that it can replace damaged or lost cells. So, for example, our skin has dead cells that we're constantly shedding every day, and those are being replaced by new cells through the process of mitosis, through that cellular division process. It also permits growth. So, for example, if you think about an embryo that's developing, the embryo gets larger through that process of cell division, and it also allows for reproduction. Your cells will divide into your sperm and your eggs, and then that can be used for reproduction and the generation of new offspring or embryos. So here we have some different functions that mitosis can be important for. You have cell replacement, you have embryo development, and then you have, say, reproduction in an amoeba, where that amoeba is basically splitting into two genetically identical individuals. You can have growth clippings, where you, say, clip a piece of a plant, you put it in potting soil and water it, and it can generate new cells and grow a new individual that will be genetically identical to the individual it came from. Same thing with a sea star. Say if you cut off this limb of the sea star, it will grow a new body, and then this body will grow a new limb. And so they can regenerate themselves that way. And again, all of these individuals on the bottom will be genetically identical to one another. And this is referred to as a process of asexual reproduction in these three cases at the bottom. And asexual reproduction is really where you have single celled organisms, mostly single celled organisms. Sea stars is kind of a rare case where that can happen. But generally, it's where your single celled organisms will reproduce by dividing in half, or basically splitting themselves in half. And like I mentioned before, the offspring of those parent cells are genetically identical to one another. And kind of the important parts to this is that there is no fertilization process, so there's no sperm and egg. So that means the organisms don't have to generate gametes. And the resulting cells are a clone. Okay, and so that's kind of the big thing from this asexual reproduction process. And again, this asexual reproduction process happens through the process of mitosis. And so mitosis is one of the two cell division processes that we're going to talk about, and it's primarily responsible for this process of asexual reproduction and also the growth and maintenance of multicellular organisms. So again, our skin cells being replaced is replaced through that process of mitosis. The next kind of reproduction that organisms can have is sexual reproduction. And this is where you actually require an egg and a sperm for fertilization. And these egg and sperm are what we refer to as gametes. And gametes are formed through another type of cell division process. But this cell division process is not mitosis, instead it's meiosis. And meiosis only occurs in your germline cells, so your germ layers. So only your reproductive organs. And so that would be your testes and your ovaries is where those cells would be generated. And so in summary, we have two specific kinds of cell division processes for organisms. You can have, there's two specific kinds of cellular processes in sexually reproducing organisms. Sexually reproducing organisms can undergo mitosis, but that is generally for growth and maintenance of that organism. But they also can undergo meiosis, which is important for reproduction, whereas single-celled organisms are only undergoing mitosis because that's how they reproduce. Plus, they're only one cell. All right, and so if we look at the eukaryotic cell, so remember we have prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. We look at the eukaryotic cell, most of the genes are located on chromosomes, and those chromosomes are found in the nucleus. Okay, and the only time you find DNA outside of the nucleus is whenever you have DNA that's in your mitochondria and your chloroplast. So remember, we talked about mitochondrial DNA, chloroplast DNA, and then nuclear DNA. And so we're specifically talking about nuclear DNA in this example. And for this nuclear DNA, each chromosome contains one very long DNA molecule, and each chromosome can have hundreds to thousands of genes depending on what that chromosome specifically codes for. And the number of chromosomes in a eukaryotic cell really differs and depends on the species that exists within or that exists in that species. So for example, a koala has 16 chromosomes. Humans have 46, so we have 23 pairs. A mouse has 40, a giraffe has 30, and then you have a plains rat that has 102 chromosomes. So you see, you can go from very small numbers of chromosomes to a very large amount of a number of chromosomes. And again, this all depends on the species that you're looking at. And so this is just kind of our basic introduction to cellular reproduction. And the next video, we're going to specifically look at somatic cell division and kind of this asexual reproduction, where we specifically focus on mitosis. And we're going to talk about the cell cycle and the mitotic cycle in the next video. So we'll see you there.